I'm not sure what comes up for you when you reach November and as you get closer to the holidays. But for me, I think about comfort, movies and games and hot chocolate and a lot of the things that feel cliche around holiday time, late fall into the holidays, into the winter. Those things hit me. And so I say that to say that some of the next few movies I'll be reviewing may or may not skew into the more whimsical, comfort films. And so I thought I would experiment with something I was thinking about for this year, which is something I'm calling, this is the fantasy family friendly film series. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's strictly going to be all about fantasy, hardcore fantasy. To me, the definition is a little bit more broad. Yes, the films that I review, coming up may deal with like hard magic, with spells and wizards and dragons and stuff. But to me, fantasy is also, it's action fantasy to me. Or power fantasies. So it might include superhero movies and things too, or there just could be some evergreen stuff that I'll continue to talk about. But something hit me this year coming into this month, because it's been a rough year, I think, for myself and the family. And I find myself going further back to childhood stuff often, which is, that hasn't really gone away from me. I've always kind of been in touch with that, but I found that as I've gotten older and lived a bit more life and experienced a little bit more loss, and the comforting things from childhood feel safe a bit of an escape from like the real life. So there are movies that I've been thinking about that I want to revisit, that I haven't talked about on this channel, and some that I haven't seen, or some that I've just recently seen for the first time ever. And they're older movies that kind of find their way in a similar genre, some of the whimsical films. And I'm excited to talk about those. And there's a whole bunch more that I've discovered that I have added to my list to watch. So some of them may pop up on this in the next few reviews. Some may not. And then there's just a bunch of other stuff that I just watched that I'm going to be talking about. So keep that in mind. But that out of the way, today's movie, Highlander. Because in the end, there can be only one. Let's talk about it. Highlander is one of those properties that has kind of been in the periphery, for me. I've never seen the movies all the way through. I think as a kid, I might have seen pieces of, not even the first one, maybe I think the second or third one on television. KICU 36, Action 36 used to show movies on like Saturdays, and they showed them during the week too. But one of them was one Highlander movie. I don't believe it was the first one, because I remember Sean Connery, somehow he was in the mix and he was getting crushed, or he was under some fan or something like that. I don't know which one that was, but that's my memory from the Highlander movies. I had more extensive experience with the Highlander live action television show from the early mid 90s with Adrian Paul as Duncan MacLeod. That was one of these shows, frankly, that we used to watch, along with Hercules, The Legendary Journeys, and Xena Warrior Princess. Around the same time, those shows were on at the same time. So if you had cable and you had the USA Network, you'd watch the Highlander television series. And in the mornings before going to school, we'd watch the Highlander animated series with Quentin MacLeod as the main immortal that we follow. And as far as the movies were concerned, I knew they were there. I'd never watched them. Again, I was the television show was it, like the live action show was the extent. And the other thing that was just more memorable outside of Adrian Paul as Duncan MacLeod was the theme song for that show, which was, if Freddie Mercury wrote the song for that, the Queen performed, which I didn't know was going to feature in this movie, but this is where it came from. This film is where that stuff came from. And while I'm there, since I'm talking about Queen, there are several songs performed by Queen in this movie, and they're all fantastic. So I was blown away by that. I was like, yo, this is what the music in this mess is gangster. This is so serious. I can't believe I never really experienced it before. Most anywhere you look online, any article you find, you will find this film critically panned, but it has gained a cult following. I mean, it spawned sequels and multiple television shows, comic books, video games. There's something to this Highlander stuff. Coming in to check out this first one, I was curious. I had no real reference point outside of the television show. So I feel like getting into the world of Highlander from the beginning was immediately going to be cool. And I was going into my like, what's some fun, whimsical fantasy type stuff that I hadn't seen really that I might want to get into, and this was one of those movies. If you don't know, this film is about a man named Connor MacLeod, played by Christopher Lambert, who was born in the 1500s in the Highlands of Scotland, and he's killed by his rival, simply called the Kurgan, played by Clancy Brown, who is from a rival clan. And he discovers after his murder that he is immortal. He can't die. And so after being, kicked out of his village, no one around him understands why he survived or somehow came back to life after being properly dead. But the result is that, he's got to get out of the village. So he ends up wandering the world for centuries, only to meet up with the Kurgan in New York City, of all places, where they will have the battle to end all battles. And so that is the premise of this movie. And as I said at the start of this video, there can be only one. Only one of them can win. The first thing that immediately jumped out at me about this movie was the camera work. So the first few sequences have amazing camera work. There's some sweeping shots of there's a wrestling match happening and the camera is going all through this venue. You see all the audience and you see all this, I don't know, how the heck did they get that shot? That seemed like a much more, I don't know, modern shot. It seemed like a today shot. But there are several shots in the film like that, where the camera's just doing masterful movement and really getting us into the area that's being photographed. And it's just done so like a painter's brush. It's like a painting, not just visually, but the visuals on display are already great, but it's how the camera is capturing that stuff feels like brushstrokes. It's really cool. If you haven't seen it lately, give it a watch just watch the camera. Just pay attention to what the camera is doing because it's actually pretty cool. The camera work is also great in the action sequences, the fight sequences, which are, for the most part, very well choreographed. There are a couple moments that are kind of wild, you have guys doing flips and stuff out of nowhere, which was pretty funny to me. At the time, I didn't laugh. It was more like, that's weird. Why would he flip out of nowhere? And I can see the humor in it, but I don't think it was meant to be humorous. Random flips in a fight sequence felt like Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but not as serious. To me, the Empire Strikes Back lightsaber duel and the Return of the Jedi lightsaber duel between Luke and Vader, where there are flips, they felt purposeful and played well within the context of the fight. The flip here in this movie does not. It feels random. It feels like just for the purpose of flipping. And this guy that is fighting our hero is also an immortal, so he's a skilled fighter. You don't need to be flipping out of nowhere. If you're gonna fight. Just do that. So aside from that, it's well done. Another battle sequence I thought was well photographed and well executed, just from a performing standpoint, was the battle in Scotland. One of the flashback sequences where Connor is remembering his past, and the setup, the staging of that battle, and the execution of it is very well done. The wrangling of the extras, all the bodies there had to do. It's well captured, and it's not frantic. You understand where people are location wise. They don't have a bunch of random cuts in there that don't make sense. Very well done. It was good. The visuals on display are pretty great for the time, but also I think they hold up for the most part pretty well by today's standards. I speak particularly of when it comes time for an immortal essence to be transferred to the winner of a duel. The way it's set up is pretty cool. The way it's portrayed with the lighting, the wind effects, and also whatever there's sections of like animation that's happening, like swirls and stuff, like animated smoke and stuff. It's really cool. It's pretty tight. So yeah, granted, I know today if that were done, it would look a little bit different. But I think if you stay in the mind frame of what's happening on screen, it still works. Also, the special effects with the swords and how they clash. It reminds me very much of how the lightsabers hit when lightsaber duels take place, and it feels like that level of epicness. And I was with it. I would totally dug it. I was all up in it. And I was like, yeah, this is the kind of stuff. If they're fighting like that, these are like that's battles. They're fighting like battles of the ages. If you think of just the concept of that, like when I think of the battle of the Duel of the Fates, right, from Phantom Menace, and like Duel of the Heroes and stuff like that, these are not just the battles that are happening that we're seeing. The battles they're fighting are like age-old battles. They're like mythic battles. Yes, Darth Maul, in the moment, he's fighting Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn. But for real, that's a battle of ideals. That is like the hidden Sith reemerged after a century, and they've come back with a vengeance, and the Jedi, and they're battling at it. But it's like what they stand for is what's at stake too. Those ideals are fighting. Two contrasting ideals are at war. And the same thing with Battle of the Heroes with Obi-Wan and Anakin. It's not just them two. It's the light side and the dark side. It's everything else. Everything's in the balance. And I think what's cool about when I think about that in relation to Highlander is that you have people who are fighting who've been alive for a century, some cases millennia, and they have to fight each other for all these centuries leading up to the quickening, right? Or whatever the last leading up to like this final battle where two people in all the existence of all immortals. This is how I think about it. The movie doesn't make this clear, but it feels like from the time they're all born, they're drawn to each other. They have to fight each other for all these thousands and thousands of years until you get down to two, and then one of them can win and claims the ultimate prize. There's something super mythic and pretty awesome about that concept. I loved how the concept of immortality is not explained. It's like you happen to be born with this, ability, or it's like you were born with a birthmark. It's that kind of thing. And I understand like successive movies try to come up with an origin and everything else, but I think it's much better that there's no explanation for it. Just like I think while I'm sort of lukewarm on the notion of midichlorians and stuff in the universe of Star Wars as an explanation of how the Force works, whatever it is, if that were never mentioned, like it wouldn't really matter, because to me, and really the midichlorians don't really make that much of a difference if you look at the prequel movies as a whole. But even if you look at the series as a whole, they don't really. It's kind of like I'm always going to pick between midichlorians and just the notion of the Force being this life force that binds us and can, like, that's the explanation Obi-Wan gave in A New Hope is a much better, I think, explanation for what the Force is, which is to say that it's just something that's there and you're born with it, and that's what's happening. And similarly, being an immortal is that, and I appreciated that a lot. Too many things now tend to over-explain stuff. When I don't know that that's in some cases it's okay to have like hints at stuff, but I think if you explain too much, and I said this before about other things, I think it loses the mystery and the magic of it. There's a magic in something that's happening that can't be explained, and there's something that's very fantastic about that. There's a fantasticalness about it. You can't explain it. It just is. You're just existing, and that's kind of neat. Just like we know how we're born, we know how humans are born, but what you don't know is all the things that go into making this one person be born. It's kind of, you can't explain that away. Like you can't, like, how do you explain what that is? How do you explain the fact that you were born and not another person was born? Like that, it's kind of wild. Like and I think when I think of immortality in this universe, it feels like that. You happen to be born, and you happen to be born immortal. And that's it. Just leave it alone. Acting. There's been a lot of talk about Christopher Lambert and the fact that he feels like he's a bad actor in this movie, how his accents slip between when he's in Scotland and how he is in the present day versus when he's in the little section in the 1940s, what that looks like, and his facial expressions and all that type of stuff. Whatever, man. If you just go along with the ride, go along for the ride. I think it matters less. If you follow the story, it can be grating a little bit. It can be like, why is he? Because there's certain sections where you can't understand what he's saying. You may have to put subtitles on. You can hear them, but you can't understand all the syllables and stuff that come out. So and that might be something that I thought about this after I watched him. Like, well, maybe this was a product of where he was in his career as an actor, acting in English speaking movies or whatever it is. I don't know because when you look at it 10 years later ish, when he was in Mortal Kombat as Raiden, he was fantastic. He was excellent. There was no concern about how he spoke, his accent or anything like that. There was nothing weird about how he portrayed the character. He was one of the strongest aspects of that movie. And I think you see that in his presence, and in this movie, the presence is there. I think that's what you get. I understand there were other people sort of in line for the role, but I think it works. It works. Clancy Brown is a fantastic villain. It feels like he's having a lot of fun. He is just wild. He's playing it really big and really bombastic, and he's like a warrior. He's like what the Joker would be if he was a warrior. He's fun. He's fun to watch. It's infectious. You feel like he's laughing and doing kind of crazy stuff, and I think as an audience member, I was on board with that. He was the kind of villain that you knew, hey, this guy's going to be a problem for our hero, and you wanted that fight. You wanted to see that fight. It's like, this guy, he's having a little too much fun. We need somebody to stop him real quick. He needs to calm down. But it was great too. So Clancy Brown definitely is he's one of the strong things about this movie. As wild as he is, and I think any weirdness in the movie is because of him. And it's not bad weirdness. It's actually good stuff. He really did a lot to bring this character to life. He feels very much alive as a villain, as a character. And what's cool about it too is it's in such contrast to Connor, to how Christopher Lambert plays the hero. He's very much more understated. Occasionally he'll have moments where he smiles and stuff. But for the most part, he's very stoic. He's very serious. And it's a cool contrast to see the two. Now, Sean Connery is this wild card that is the breath of fresh air. He feels like a breath of fresh air in the movie when he appears. And for as long as he's around, you're comforted by his presence. I felt like, you're protected by this dude. And like Connor, who comes to, revere Ramirez, and he learns a lot from Ramirez as a fighter, but also as a person, how to move in the world as an immortal person. Ramirez is giving him wisdom about relationships and what he needs to be ready for, because he's at some point if he's going to maintain himself as a good fighter, he will fight for centuries until he reaches the final big boss. So he needs to be ready for that. I was surprised actually how short-lived Connery's presence is in this movie. But the movie's not terribly long. I think it's just under 2 hours. What was funny to me was that Connery is the ultimate Scotsman, right? Scots all the way through, right? So his accent is it's been strong throughout his career. What's funny was that he plays a character who is Egyptian, but he's a Spanish immortal, and he's played by a Scotsman. Pretty funny. That was funny. It was kind of like, wow, this is a wild mix of ideas and stuff. But whatever he was, Connery lends a specific gravitas to the proceedings, and along with Clancy Brown is probably one of the strongest things about this movie, next to the camera work and the concept. I love one of the sweetest things too about it. So the concept is cool. Like you have these immortals fighting for centuries and stuff. But the other thing about that is, like, from a character standpoint, Connor is a man who's lived for centuries, and he's amassed a lot of trinkets and books and weapons and things from his time on this planet, coming through these different cultures and different time periods and stuff. What was really cool about his space, like his home space, is that he has this room full of artifacts and things, like real life artifacts from that time, from the time he lived in. And that's is endlessly awesome to me. The other thing I love is Connor has a relationship with someone he befriended who was a child when they met in the 1940s. And obviously this is when we see them in present day, this is 40 years later. And they have such a sweet relationship. Rachel, I think the woman's name is, who begins the relationship with Connor as kind of an adopted daughter. But over time, you know, she becomes a trusted confidant. It's really sweet. I wanted more of her in this movie. One criticism, I think, if anything, I have is there's a love scene in this movie that feels completely out of left field, completely unnecessary. And I think it wouldn't have changed the movie either way if it was removed. I think the relationship between Connor and Brenda, the forensics person, having it be set up for that kind of relationship felt off. I would have preferred if it was like you could keep everything as it was, but without the romantic sort of undertones, whatever it is. That just came. In the end, there wasn't enough time to establish a proper relationship between them like that. But again, I recognize, look, this was the 1980s, and there was not a lot of room for subtlety in certain instances, particularly when it came to romantic relationships and stuff like that. But that's not. There are movies from that time period that do that have some subtlety in it, and it's not every relationship is meant to be romantic or sexual in nature. And so they did do it. It just didn't happen a lot. And unfortunately, this is one of those movies that did not do that. Having said that about the love scene, it is very artfully executed. It's shot with minimal light, and you can see the city in the background. It's actually very artfully shot and kind of and steamy and very sensual. So it's a lovely sequence. It just feels like it could have been somewhere else in a different movie. Didn't feel like the right movie for it. That's the one criticism. The other criticism is in the last act, Brenda's involvement is weird to me. At some point, you know, she's going to be a damsel in distress and she'll have to be rescued. But there's inconsistencies around her involvement in the last act that feel, I think it's played for humor, but to me, it just took me out of the seriousness of the last battle. This is in the middle of the final climactic battle between Connor and his nemesis. And I wanted that to be uninterrupted, like just straight up. And for the most part it was, which was fantastic about it. It's a fantastically choreographed sequence. It feels long. It feels like meaty. It feels sufficiently long. Like this is the kind of fight that if this is going to be the fight of the ages, and you cannot lose this fight if you're the hero. You can't, like either one. This is a do or die. And the fight felt mostly like that. It was whenever Brenda kept getting cut back to, or in the mix, she was in the mix at all somehow, it took me out of that. So those are my biggest issues that came up with the movie. I had a good time. I really enjoyed this movie. I had fun with it. And again, the concept was so cool to me. I dug it, and it was cool to watch it, knowing the context that I have for the television show and the animated TV show. That's just kind of cool to have this it's a new experience in that way for me. And yeah, I'm with it. So Highlander, if you've seen it, awesome. If you haven't, I recommend it. I generally do, especially if you're a film head, for the visuals. Oh, like the visuals on display. Also the locations, like Scotland is immaculately photographed. Just have to put that in there. It's beautiful. and they captured it very, very nicely. And so watch it for that. That alone is gonna get you. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this review on Highlander. If you've stuck around this long, again, as always, I appreciate your time hanging out with me. You could be doing a whole bunch of other things, and should you come to this video and decide to watch it all, I generally appreciate that. So thank you. But it's time for me to get some food, so I'm out of here. But in the meantime, take it easy, and I will see you in the next video.